Hello, and welcome to another edition of Why Are You Laughing at Me with Gherkin Picklewater. Today, my guest is Flobo Boyce. Flobo, can you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, man. I gotta say, man, I love the shirt. Swag's on
Thanks.
point, man.
I try. I
Yeah.
try.
The best way to describe myself is I call myself a live entertainment professional. Originally from Brooklyn, I live in Los Angeles now, and I just do a lot. Whether it's like emceeing, whether it's writing or comedy or stand up or writing for other comedians, it's kind of a hodgepodge, man. I'm glad to get into it today.
Wonderful. Um, so let's start with stand up because you did stand up for a while. You also, like you said, you do content creation. You're an author. You're a DJ. What brought you to stand up in the first place?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I was a kid and I grew up in the Tonight Show era. Jay Leno's my guy. And that's the reason I always say that because if you watch Tonight Show long enough, you have a guy, whether it's Fallon or Carson. But I grew up with Leno and I always wanted to do it. It was one of those someday kind of deal. I was very heavy as an adult and I lost the weight the old-fashioned way. I lost like 150 pounds on the Subway diet. It's true. I ate footlongs for a week, and I decided to get the surgery to remove the excess skin I had because I had lost so much weight so quickly. And I'm going somewhere with this. But what happened was I had a complication from that surgery. So I had what's called a amnioplasty or a tummy tuck, and a part of my suture, the sewing me up, had reopened, and I was bleeding out on my couch one day, about 3 days after my surgery.
Oh,
And I thought literally I was going to die that night. When you think you're going to die, I'm not, if you've ever been there, please don't like ask to be there. But you panic until you don't. And so when I was panicking, I was like, "Oh man, I'm only 29 at the time. I didn't kiss as many girls. I didn't make as much money. I got more life to live." And I hit that crossover like, "Look, you know what? I had a good run. If I die, it's cool. The only thing I regretted in my life so far was I never learned how to ride a motorcycle and I never tried stand up. And I took a nap, I fell asleep, passed out, fell asleep, and I survived the next day. The wound, which was 4 inches long and about an inch and a half wide, had basically congealed. So I had like a big red jello mark on the side of my body for about a couple weeks, and we tried to find a way to walk that suture back in. And when I had that second lease on life, you only live twice, right? 6 months later, I took my first comedy class here in Los Angeles, and that took me off at the races. So it was something I always wanted to do, but would have been a someday situation. But then when I almost died, it was like, you got to do something because this life is kind of, tenuous, if you will.
yeah, that's amazing. Um, had completely different but similar experiences in my life that drove me with the same kind of motivation to other things. But what before your epiphany there, um, what brought your interest to comedy in the first place? Before you said I need to do this now, what
Yeah.
drew you to wanting to do it at all?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. Because back to the Tonight Show thing, my parents were working class people. They worked six jobs between them. Whether it was my dad was worked on trains and he had a side business like being a handyman, and my mom was a nurse, then a nurse professional during the day and an actual nurse at night. So they were always home. They were always very stern. They didn't really laugh a lot. But every night at 11:35, when Jay Leno came out, and this is kind of a weird thing to say, and with his new crop of Monica Lewinsky jokes, my parents laughed. You never got to see my parents laugh. And they, for that 15 minutes, or sometimes even longer, because when headlines was up on Monday, I was allowed to stay up to watch headlines. This was really one of the few times I saw my parents not care about the bills or whether or not they have enough money or whatever. And I said, man, if my family felt that way, there's got to be someone else like there who are in the same situation. So I always wanted to have a late night variety show with the distinct issue or distinct mission of alleviating the pain of bills and bosses and getting up for work from other people.
Do you still have that goal, having your own late night variety show?
Yeah, Mr. Picklewater, I do. It's breaking my heart because the actual medium is changing, right? So no
Yeah.
one really sits down and watches an hour anymore. I think I watched Saturday Night Live in a hotel room last week, but before then it had been almost a decade since I'd done that. And so it's kind of hard to renegotiate what that is. I mean, is a YouTube show the same thing? Is doing a community theater in front of 50 people the same thing? I'm not so sure. But to answer your question, if that existed in the way I remembered it existing, the answer is yes.
I found that so much of the reason I do what I do, whatever it happens to be that I do, is because the thing that I wanted to exist, to experience, to be able to consume as a consumer and audience member didn't exist. And I had to just make it exist. And that's the only reason I do so much of what I do. It's not because of any desire to really do it. It's just because it doesn't exist yet, and I need to force it to happen in the world. So
So
I
you're a
understand those
visionary,
kinds
is
of
what it
dreams.
is.
What was that?
You're a visionary. You see the
Oh,
vision, you do it.
that's that. Okay, I will accept that. Thank you. Um, so what? Going back to comedy, and well, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now with sports commentary and content creation. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the original intersection happened about 3 years ago. Because even though I have not been on stage in about a year and a half now, almost 2 years, I started doing comedy commentary with wrestling, professional wrestling. I love it. I grew up with it. It kind of was like the theater and around. This characters are over the top, and so I would be doing these podcasts, but as the comedy guy, just really commentating on how absurd it was. I was an actual commentator, like sports commentator, but I was commentating on how absurd wrestling can be with stories and characters. And I got a job with Spotify. And they had just bought The Ringer, which was owned by Bill Simmons, and they had a slate of wrestling programming. And I was one of the laughing heads on the show called MacMania. We lasted 15 months, and then we got sunsetted. And so when that show was over, I didn't know what to do. I mean, WrestleMania season, if you follow it, it's in March. April, right? It's kind of like, yeah, my whole identity was around making fun of this sport. And I am a lifelong baseball fan, and April's when the season opened. And I said, well, is there a way to do that with a sport my friends growing up thought was boring in baseball? And I connected with Mark Cheatham, who owns this platform called the Black Baseball Mixtape. And to this day, I'm a contributor and I do a podcast for him called In the Booth. And I said, I understand his platform is really more about why don't black kids play baseball. And I go, that's very, very important. But I think to put a little bit of the medicine in the mashed potatoes, if we cover the sport from a place of levity from the black perspective, it won't necessarily be about the struggle all the time. And that can help the brand. And so I became that guy's man on the street. Like I was going to Denver, eating Rocky Mountain oysters. For those who don't know what Rocky Mountain oysters are, don't Google them. And I was asking people about their take on the game because I really want to add some fun back to the late night talk show thing, but for baseball and for black viewers.
That's really great. I got my start as a performer as a professional wrestler.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, you get it.
In the loosest possible sense. It was barroom professional wrestling in Portland, Oregon. We were at a club called Satyricon, one of the oldest punk clubs in America. It's not around. Well, it's not around in the same form anymore. It may have been rebought and relaunched. And we
Yeah.
were doing it on hardwood floors in a bar up on stage. I was playing a clown character. I was dumping buckets full of slime on the audience and hitting people with candy glass bottles and the whole thing.
You see
It
that,
was a
dude?
blast.
I'm in parties defending clowns. Like, why are you afraid of clowns? They're good people. You're out here dumping slime on individuals. Come on, man.
I was just starting my career as a performer and my journey into clown then. So I'm a
Yeah.
much different kind of clown now than I was at that point in my life. Well, talking about baseball and comedy, this is very tangential. What do you think about the Savannah Bananas?
I hated them for a long time. And
Okay.
I was like, man, I didn't get it. And I had to go check myself before I wreck myself because it I know the comparison is, oh, they're the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball, but the Harlem Globetrotters actually play the game of baseball, like Savannah ball or banana ball, excuse me, where the fans can make outs and there's only one
Oh,
point per inning, really ticked me off.
I
Because
can see
like,
that.
what's
Yeah.
what's the point of that? But I feel like now because I'm been interacting with people who say, look, I never give baseball a chance. I watch the banana ball games. I'll check out real base or classic baseball. I was like, okay, cool. And then and especially as a black fan, having the launch of the Indianapolis Clowns this year, the Clowns were a famous Negro League team that were kind of the Savannah Bananas of its day. They employed little people, as you call them now. They had the first women players in all of professional baseball in America were clowns. In fact, Tony Stone was brought on to replace Jackie Robinson, who had gone to the major leagues to break the color barrier. So the brand came back. It kind of had a sense of legitimacy, and I was like, you know what, man, let's have some fun. The last thing you want to do is be that old guy on the lawn being like, yo, back in my day, games were 6 hours long, and we liked it. So I've opened up over time.
So that was the Indianapolis Clowns, you said?
Yeah, the Indianapolis Clowns. So the Negro
I'll,
Leagues are being revived this year.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
I've not seen the bananas myself. I've only seen clips of them. So, and I was definitely under the impression they were more along the lines of the Harlem Globetrotters than you know just exhibition without necessarily the sports skill to it. Because the Globetrotters were incredibly skilled athletes on top of being comedians and clowns.
yeah, yeah.
So here's a kind of left field question.
Bring it on.
All right, what role do you want to have in society?
Oh man, how about a law-abiding citizen? And it's hard because the laws change every day. No, it's a funny thing, man. I think about that. I'll give you a story. And so yesterday I went to the car wash. This is the dumb story, but this is kind of like to answer your question. I went to a car wash, and it was one of those car washes where at the gas station where you have to get in a line and then you go to the machine and it does it for you. And a guy, I had my ticket, and a guy cut me off to hold his place and then went inside and bought his ticket. And I got really upset about that. So I went inside and I tried to talk to the guy. He ignored me. Tried talking to the counter, and they ignored me too, saying that's not our problem. And I was just so mad. But I already had paid for the car wash. I had to sit in that loss for a long time. And I go, I can see why people crash out and say things. Do you know who I am? I can see why people say, "Oh, my dad," or whatever, or I'm this and this and this. And so I had this thing. I go, hey, if I ever got so mad, I had to declare who I was, what would I say? And so it's kind of a funny runaway way of thinking of that thing. And so I like to say I like to be a good human. That's kind of a cop out. Let's be real. I love entertaining. I have a day job. I flirted with a traditional appointment. I've been self-employed for a long time. But when someone says, "I'll give you whatever money you want. I'll patronize whatever you need. You get to do whatever you want to do." I want to be able to be an MC. I want to be able to be called upon to give your event some sort of levity. When you see my face or visage on something, know that you're in for a good time. I want to be seen as everyone's favorite cousin or uncle, depending on how old you are. You know.
Very cool. In terms of MC work, do you have any particular uh, people that you look up to in that field? I say this because I do some MC work myself, and the people that I aspire to really want to be more like are people like Peaches Christ, the drag queen, who
Oh
does just
yeah.
incredible. She's an incredible MC, and I want to have that level of like I do a lot of improv as well, but I don't handle the MC improv with the kind of skill and grace that she does. So, are the people that you see as kind of pinnacles of that genre?
Sure. So when I was a kid, the first MC I was exposed to, which is kind of funny because he's still around, is Ryan Seacrest. And Ryan Seacrest was a host of a game show called Click. And you can look this up online. It's like it was a game show, but the whole premise was it was 90s cyber stuff. So you're hitting buttons on the screen, clicking a mouse, and don't get a virus or you lose your. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is still working doing that. That was the first person that told me that you could have a career just leading the way. And that to me blew my mind. But to answer your question, like thematically, I got to go back to the idea of the late night variety show. So when I was a kid, and I didn't know any Spanish, my parents are Caribbean, but they are English speaking Caribbean. They have a show called Sábado Gigante. And Don Francisco was seen as a Mexican, even though he wasn't, for almost 40 years doing this show. And he was appointment viewing. And I thought that was another level. So not only you can make a career about doing that, you've ingrained yourself into a culture that's not necessarily your native one, and people look up to you as their own. And when I went and I visited England again, stuck in a hotel room, I came across Saturday Night's Takeaway, which is a very similar show to Sábado Gigante, but it's hosted by Ant and Dec, which are two guys from Newcastle that bounce off each other. And I go, okay, so you can do this as a career. You can ingrain yourself into a culture and be seen as appointment viewing, and you don't have to do it alone, and you have to have the timing to do something week in and week out. So, okay, there's a path to success. There's a path to being better in a craft, and if you do it well, you can theoretically make money, but also be beloved. Okay, great. So like those four guys are kind of like the North Stars for me.
So, okay, on that, you're talking about path to success and path to being better. What are you doing to improve your own craft?
Sure. Some days, not enough, man. I'm just keeping it 100%. I practice every day. I sit in the mirror every day, and I do back calling. That's when you're on radio and you say you just listen to these 4 or 5 songs. I emulate some sports commentators now, so like Dave Croft from F1, Michael Cole from WWE for sure. I always try to get myself live entertainment work, so I'm currently a benefit auctioneer. I say benefit because there are cattle auctioneers and automobile auctioneers. I'm not those. I do everything else. And so I work that. So I not only do I read what's on the card and I try to get everyone energized to give, there's also that skill of trying to upshift and downshift the tone in the room. If you want to pull heartstrings, you want people to laugh, if things are delayed, that timing. You, as much as practicing in the mirror is great, you can't do that forever. Doesn't matter if you wrestle, if you're a comedian, if you're a clown, if you build balloon animals, you can only practice so much in front of a mirror for so long. You need instant feedback. You need audiences. You need to be able to have that ring shape when you do it. So I'm with you, man. Like that's the thing I try to do to be better at. I watch my tapes. I go, what would I do? I'm a New Yorker. Most times it's slow down, but the idea is that you want to be able to know what's wrong and pinpoint that and get better that way.
For me, it's speeding up. I watch my tapes. I have so much trouble watching my tapes. It is so difficult for me to do it. But
Oh
it's
yeah,
like I need to put more energy here. I need to put more energy here. This works, but these places all need more energy.
yeah,
There were so many things that you just said that I wanted to spin off of.
sure.
Uh, but let's go with when you're creating, when you're writing stand up, when you're writing one of your books or the comic books, when you are creating, before you can get it in front of that audience, before you can get your feedback, what's your theoretical framework for knowing something is going to be good?
Character first. I'm a huge believer in character first, and that could be if I'm talking about a book, that's the main character, obviously. If I'm doing stand up, it's the point of view or act out, right? If the character works, sometimes the writing falls into place. So I know when something feels great when this thing feels real. If I find myself adding dialogue, if I find myself saying, okay, I don't want to offend anybody, okay, no, this is kind of what I would like, then you're tired of not making an organic thing. I think now more than ever with entertainment, with everything, with our food, with our restaurants, with our vacation destinations, fans and customers and clients are looking at the back of labels. Who's this guy? Where is he from? Who does he believe in? And unfortunately, who's that person work for? So the days of you getting on stage and being like, take my wife, please, doesn't work anymore. At least in the United States, because it seems to being like, okay, you're just a joke machine. Who really are you? So when I do everything, when I write anything, when I create fictional works of anything, the character has to sound like a real person with likes, dislikes, flaws, things you agree with, things you disagree with, and then build the story and world around them. And the details behind that world is so important. And I know I'm kind of bouncing around different mediums here, but it's more of a little translation in books. You make the character, you give them a world, like you may give them characters they love, cars they drive, movies they love. When you're on stage doing an act out, it isn't just this guy said this. Like, give me where is he saying it? Show me the hair. Walk around stage and use your body as an instrument to see how they would walk. That sort of thing.
I've got a solo show, and a duo show
Let's
that it
go.
did. The solo show we launched last year, staged it locally, and staged it at a Fringe after that locally. The duo show is in production right now. We're bringing them both to Hollywood Fringe this year in June
Wow.
together as a double feature. But
I did it once. Tough
oh, you
crowd
did? How was
sometimes.
it? How was it
Hollywood
for you?
Fringe. I did a stand-up show in Hollywood Fringe, so it's a stand-up, but it's a lot of fun because those who show up are about the culture. That no, doesn't usually happen in what we do. Sometimes you get people who are like, "Who are you?" Eh. So it's kind of a refreshing treat to be like, if it works, they'll let you know, and if it doesn't, they'll let you know. But at least you know the crowd is open to trying
Yeah.
new things. Yeah,
That's lovely. Yeah, it's coming from the Bay Area to LA to do the Hollywood Fringe is just it's a huge logistical leap beyond doing it locally. But
hmm
characters. So like I have the standard me character that I do when I'm performing most of my clown work. That is the solo show, and in the duo show I'm still trying to develop like which of my in improv they call them super characters, like
hmm
these things that you can drop into that you've built some layers to, that aren't just completely flailing at random. You're taking these concepts of some kind of personality and dropping them into a scene. Like which aspect of me is going to fit that new show best. So character is, when I was learning clown, they were really about physicality first and
Hmm.
character second. And I always wanted to go the other direction. I think we all yearned to really be developing character, but going back to what you said about getting in front of an audience, that the clown training I took was just about let's get that first 2 years that you would be in front of an audience out of the way in 1 year of training, and then you'll start training for real once you get in front of audiences. So yeah,
Yeah,
character's a is a huge hurdle and a huge impetus for audience connection too.
absolutely.
What what is a project that or event, whatever you want to call it, that you have done that you are particularly proud of?
And stand up or just in general? Like that's
In general,
oh
any of your
yeah, yeah.
projects.
There because there's so many different reasons why I'm proud of things,
Yeah.
right? So okay, I'll do comedy first. I'll give you two. So when I first started doing comedy, my teacher, Adam Barnhart, and he's based in Los Angeles, and he trained Natasha Leggero. He comes from the School of Clown as well, and so his class was in a place called the Clown House downtown. It had since moved, and it was full of clowns, like porcelain clowns. If you didn't like clowns, get over yourself. But after about 2 years of doing it, he asked me to open for him, and that was the first time where I felt seen and validated
Wow.
as a performer. Because when you're young, you think you're good, but you do 3 minutes here, 5 minutes here. Your friends stop coming because they've seen your bit already, and now you're trying to be like, okay, am I over or what have you? But the show was about overcoming bullying because Adam Barnhart was a gay man in the time in the 70s where you couldn't. And he opened for Andrew Dice Clay. So if you know Dice Clay's
Oh,
work,
wow.
imagine going to a Dice Clay show and the first guy out there is so unlike Dice. You're like, what? By the way, Dice went to my high school. But that was kind of the opening for my teacher on a bullying topic. And I was a fat kid, like I mentioned. So not only was I getting tapped as a comedian professional, now I'm doing the second stage of comedy work, and that's opening up about yourself. Because when you start doing jokes, you're right. You know what's funny? Have you seen CNN? Like you become very observational, and then you have to go deeper because everyone can make those jokes. If you could do jokes everyone can make, no one's going to pay you. When no one goes and buys a comedy ticket, it's I want to know what Dave Chappelle feels about this, and that's the difference, right? So that to me was one of the first ones. For the writing side, I was a fictional writer my entire career because I was a editing student. I wanted to be a director and a writer, and no one wanted me to change programs in film school. And my last fictional book had did so poorly, I was going to quit writing. And it was the pandemic, and I was like, look, I always wanted to write a memoir. If I'm going to quit writing, I might as well just end with a memoir. And so I wrote Graduation Day, which was the base of the theme was my commencement speech at graduation was so bad because my commencement speaker was like a store manager at Walmart.
Oh,
And I go,
wow.
that's not really successful. What would I do? What would I tell myself if I was sitting in that stage, how to survive adulthood? And it was my first and only nonfiction book and my best-selling book of all time. So like, it became this thing where it's like, and I hear Rick Rubin say this, the audience comes last. You write for yourself and then the audience will follow. And it's true. Once you start writing what you're funny about, what's funny to you, it worked in comedy. When I started writing a book out of spite because no one bought my last book, people came and saw, oh man, are you gonna write a sequel to this book? I loved it. And you're like, what? So yeah, it's two things for me.
Yeah, the on two notes. Yeah, for me, comedy clown is the same way. It is about what I find funny. It is about what appeals to me as a human being, not about the audience. Because I figure there's an audience out there. It's somewhere there's an audience who's gonna respond to what I'm doing, to what I'm saying. Somewhere I'm going to find them. And a lot of my friends and colleagues and peers have a very different attitude towards like what is the audience going to find funny. For me, it is very much about what works for me. But speaking of stand up, I just started. I just started doing it in this show. I'd never done any stand up before. I have maybe 3 minutes at the most that I'm doing, and only one set of jokes works. But I'm still doing the whole 3 minutes, and it is completely new and baffling and terrifying. And so everything you're saying is really giving me some points to look at in examining the act that I'm doing. I do some somewhat introspective stuff, but it's absurdist because it's a clown show. So the jokes are somewhat absurdist as well. Um,
Yeah, I can only see that for sure.
so we've just got a couple more questions and I'll let you go. who are some of your heroes aside from Tonight Show? Who are some of your heroes in the different genres that you work in? Who are the people you look up to?
Yeah, I like to say that I look up to no one. I create all my work in a void, but I'll be totally lying to you. When I was a kid, definitely Jay Leno was the big one, sure. But Tony Danza. Tony Danza was my
Okay.
childhood hero. Um, because I'm not even sure if he's from Brooklyn. I think he's from Philly, or if he's from Brooklyn, then definitely. But he played a Brooklyn guy growing up. But he is to me the last Renaissance man. And when I say last Renaissance man is that I grew up. I'm Gen Y. Sorry, I'm a millennial. I hate the word, but I'm a millennial. But I consider myself Gen Y. We have this pressure to what I call collect slashes. Hey, wait, what do you do? Well, I'm a writer slash dancer slash comedian slash author. And yes, I do all those things, but I like to approach everything I do separately from the bottom and say, I suck at this. How can I get better? So to me, I don't think I'm master of them. It's like these are things I like and I want to get better at. I look at Tony Danza growing up, and it was like he was already on TV. He was an actor. Then I learned he was a boxer. He was a teacher, a ukulele player, a jazz singer. Like I had his jazz album. It was on Spotify, but they removed it. The guy does so many different things disparately, and he gets all these roles. He gets to play Tony. Like that guy was like the first like really like how can I do this? How can I emulate this and do that? Comedian wise, it's kind of a real point now, but I was into Trevor Noah before he got crossover famous. I went to one of his early American shows. He was already starring in South Africa. I went to one of his early American shows at Flappers Comedy here in Burbank. He blew me away, and I followed him then. I was like follower like 30,000. Now he's like 3 million followers. And what I liked about his special, one of my favorite comedy specials of all time, is Trevor Noah's Crazy Normal. And the reason being is that it is a South African show for a South African audience, but he takes the time to explain things as an American I understood. So I know who Shabir Sheikh is. I know who Jacob Zuma was. I know who the Scorpions were. Why is it the guy on ZTV has a funny voice? It was like a weird thing where like South Africans already knew that, but his presentation put me in the joke, and I go, oh, there's levels to this. Because I can get up and I can look at TikTok and someone goes, you're from Brooklyn when, and that's it. If you know, you know, and you don't, you don't. Very insular. And that's kind of the joke. You have to know. Whereas you have someone who is weaving this thing comically and sonically to get you on board, even if you don't know who the Shabir Sheikh is. And I thought that was pretty cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, those are some especially. I mean, Trevor Noah, yeah, given an amazing comedian, but yeah, Tony Danza had a huge part. I'm Gen X, and so he had a huge part of my childhood from Taxi through Who's the Boss and so on. So yeah, he's pretty amazing. Okay, last couple questions. Second to last question. Doesn't have to be yours. Just one that you're fond of. Can you tell us a joke?
I looked it up. Tony Danza's from Brooklyn.
Okay.
I'll tell you one of the jokes that I retired. So
Okay.
about the power of misdirection. Like baseball, when you're a pitcher, your fastball down the middle is that the first couple of times you have a joke and it kills every night, and you fall in love with it, and then it gets kind of lame. So I like this joke because it saved me from being booed off stage a bunch of times. But I go, man, the world has too many gritty reboots. Like I just can't stand why things that were happy go lucky are just so serious now. Like last night, I was watching TV and there was a promo that says, "This Monday, someone will die. Find out who on NBC." And I go, "Wow, that's the most intense promo for The Voice I ever heard. I hope Carson Daly makes it. I like him." And that was the first time I had a killer ending, a killer closer was that joke.
Very cool.
And that
That's
was like
very
10 years
cool.
ago. Yeah.
All right. Last question. What projects are you working on, and where can people find your work?
Yeah, I'm going to be under a bridge contemplating. No, I'm just kidding. So, right now, I like to combine my love with writing and comedy and sports. I have a blog, it's on Substack. It's called justasandwich.com. And when I was a kid, sometimes you would go to a restaurant and they say, "You want fries with that?" You go, "No." just the sandwich. And it kind of is my release point to talk about the world of sports in that really funny way, kind of expanding on the baseball thing. That's where I'm at usually. And if you want to hear more of my baseball coverage, I have a podcast. It's called In the Booth with Flobo Boyce. It releases every other Monday during the regular season. But the difference is in this one, we sit with people who are fans of baseball, but they do other things that support the sport. So if you're an artist and a baseball lover, if you're a broadcaster and a baseball lover, if you are a youth body scientist and a baseball lover, it's a place for you.
Very cool. Well, Flobo, thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we'll talk again in the near future.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, man.